In today's video, you're not going to just learn how to use these must-know everyday verbs for conversation. You can also make sure they really stick with this specially made addictive shooting game. And there'll be a shout out in my next video for whoever gets top of the leaderboard. Welcome to ProSpanish. Okay, so let's dive straight in and get started. As always, we want to learn our new language in a conversational context. So I'm just going to add a few extra words down at the bottom here so that anybody can access this lesson, whatever their level. Normalmente, nice and easy, normally or usually. Siempre, always. Nunca, never. So our first one is quedar. Quedar is the verb. And what I'm going to do is, with all of these, I'm going to put it in a mini phrase, a phrase which is an everyday phrase and one of the most common types of phrase where you'll see this verb, because that's going to help you much more conversationally. And you can just learn this off by heart and practice it with the kind of fun shooting game that I said earlier. So, no queda mucho, there's not much left. No queda mucho. There's not much left. How would you say there's a lot left? What would that be? There's a lot left. Queda mucho. Queda mucho. There's a lot left. How about there's some cheese left? There's some cheese left. And in Spanish, we don't tend to say the word some in this kind of sentence, and you may or may not know that queso is cheese. Queso. How would you say there's some cheese left? Queda queso. Queda queso. And if you're going to say there's a bit of cheese left, you might say queda un poco de queso. How would you say there's not much cheese left? No queda mucho queso. No queda mucho queso. There's not much cheese left. And you may or may not know that to ask a question is just the same as the affirmative, but with a question tone at the end. So if you're going to say, is there much left? You would just say, queda mucho. Queda mucho, is there much left? And that could be, you could be talking about a film. You're watching a film, or somebody's watching, I don't know, maybe watching a football match on TV, and you want to ask, is there much left? And you'd say, queda mucho. How would you ask, is there much cheese left? Queda mucho queso. Queda mucho queso. Okay, on to the next one. Falta una toalla. Falta una toalla. So faltar, to be missing. Falta una toalla. There's a towel missing. So you might be staying in a hotel and need to tell them, falta una toalla. There's a towel missing. How would you say there's a lot missing? What would that be? There's a lot missing. Falta mucho. Falta mucho. There's a lot missing. How about the cheese is missing? So you might be looking at a table with everything laid out on it, and the cheese is missing. What would you say? Falta el queso. Falta el queso. Next, we have tardar, to take in terms of time. So you might know that tarde is late. Tardar is how much time something takes. So our example is tarda 2 horas. Tarda 2 horas. He takes, she takes, or it takes 2 hours. It takes 2 hours. How would you say it doesn't take long? And for this we would say it doesn't take much. So how would you say that? No tarda mucho. No tarda mucho. It doesn't take long, or she or he doesn't take long. And going back to it takes, so let's say he takes 2 hours. How would you say normally he takes 2 hours? What would that be? Normalmente tarda 2 horas. Normalmente tarda 2 horas. And that would be another way of saying he takes ages. Tarda 2 horas. He takes ages. How would you say she always takes 2 hours? What would that be? She always takes ages. What would that be? Siempre tarda 2 horas. Siempre tarda 2 horas. How would you say it always takes a long time? Siempre tarda mucho. Siempre tarda mucho. And we'll just take a quick pause there while I mention our very popular Levels 1 to 6 course. This takes the complete beginner or a near beginner right up to a conversational level of Spanish in a series of very easy to follow steps. All the lessons on this YouTube channel are supplementary, whereas the core Levels 1 to 6 is very much a step-by-step program delivered by the same teacher as all the other videos on the ProSpanish YouTube channel. And while the style is very similar to what you'll be used to from these videos on the channel, the key difference is that every lesson carefully builds on the previous lessons so that you can really feel that progress of going from very little or no Spanish up to a level where you can confidently hold a conversation in Spanish. So again, that's available exclusively from prospanish.co.uk. Next we have conseguir, to get. So, consigue lo que quiere. He or she gets what he or she wants. Consigue lo que quiere. Lo que is just what, but when it's in the middle of a sentence. How would you say he always gets what he wants? Siempre consigue lo que quiere. Siempre consigue lo que quiere. How would you say he doesn't get what he wants? No consigue lo que quiere. No consigue lo que quiere. And you could also use this with, let's say, tickets. Tickets to a concert. Entradas. Entradas. Tickets. How would you say she always gets tickets? What would that be? She always gets tickets. Siempre consigue entradas. Siempre consigue entradas. And next we have to avoid, or to evade is an easy way to remember this. Evitar, to avoid or to evade. Evita, evita. It's a bit like evita. Evita, he or she avoids. And to say he avoids trouble, we say he avoids problems. Evita problemas. How would you say he always avoids trouble? Siempre evita problemas. Siempre evita problemas. And what do you think this means? Siempre me evita. Siempre me evita. She always avoids me. Or he always avoids me. Siempre me evita. Okay, next one is aguantar. So aguantar, to put up with. To put up with. Aguantar. Aguanta mis bromas. He or she puts up with my jokes. How would you say he usually or normally puts up with my jokes? Normalmente aguanta mis bromas. Normalmente aguanta mis bromas. How about he normally puts up with me? He normally puts up with me. If you can remember what he avoids me was, normally he puts up with me. What would that be? Normalmente me aguanta. Normalmente me aguanta. And next, to try. Tratar de. So, trata de ayudar. Trata de ayudar. He or she tries to help. How would you say he never tries to help? What would that be? Nunca trata de ayudar. Nunca trata de ayudar. He never tries to help. And how would you say she tries to, and we're going to use something from earlier, he tries or she tries to avoid trouble. She tries to avoid trouble. Trata de evitar problemas. Trata de evitar problemas. How about he always tries to avoid trouble? Siempre trata de evitar problemas. Siempre trata de evitar problemas. And next we have to take out. Sacar. Sacar, to take out. And we've got saca la basura. He or she takes out the rubbish. Saca la basura. How would you say he never takes out the rubbish? Nunca saca la basura. Nunca saca la basura. And we could have, instead of the rubbish, we could have money, dinero. How would you say she always takes out some money? But we don't need the word some there. Siempre saca dinero. Siempre saca dinero. And then we have aprovechar, to make the most of or to take advantage of. So, aprovecha su tiempo. He or she makes the most of their time or takes advantage of their time. How would you say she always makes the most of her time? Siempre aprovecha su tiempo. Siempre aprovecha su tiempo. How about Pablo doesn't make good use of his time? What would that be? Pablo no aprovecha su tiempo. Pablo no aprovecha su tiempo. And then we have disfrutar. Disfrutar de something, to enjoy something. So disfruta de la vida. He or she enjoys life. In Spanish it works out enjoys the life. How would you say he never enjoys life? What would that be? Nunca disfruta de la vida. Nunca disfruta de la vida. Food is comida. Comida. How would you say she always enjoys food? What would that be? Siempre disfruta de la comida. Siempre disfruta de la comida. And we used my jokes earlier. I think it was he or she puts up with my jokes. But how about she always enjoys my jokes? What would that be? Siempre disfruta de mis bromas. Siempre disfruta de mis bromas. And that's all we have time for in today's video. As mentioned earlier, if you're looking to become conversational in Spanish, you want to become a confident and a competent speaker, then head over to prospanish.co.uk where you can download the full Levels 1 to 6 course.